Admiral stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching the stars through the massive viewing window. The ship was enormous, stretching over 2 kilometers from front to back. Its metal surface gleamed with the bright blue lights that marked it as belonging to the hegemony. Behind him, dozens of similar ships moved through space in perfect formation. The admiral was proud of his fleet. These were some of the most advanced warships in the galaxy. Their weapons could destroy entire planets. Their shields could stop almost any attack. The technology inside them was beyond what most species could even dream of building. Today, they were on a mission to explore new territory. The hegemony was always growing, always taking over new star systems. It was their right as the superior species in the galaxy. Other races were weak and primitive compared to them. They deserved to serve under rule. "Admiral," called out his communications officer, "we are receiving something strange from the long-range sensors." Turned around. His purple skin seemed to glow under the bridge lights. His 4 arms moved gracefully as he walked to the sensor station. "What kind of strange?" The officer, a younger named, looked confused. "There appears to be a group of large objects near the dead star system ahead of us. They are not moving, sir, just floating in space." "Show me," the admiral ordered. The main viewing screen changed to show what the sensors had found. Far ahead of them, near a star that had burned out long ago, were several massive shapes floating in the darkness. They were hard to see because they gave off no light of their own. "Enhance the image," said. As the picture became clearer, the admiral could see that these were ships. Huge ships, even bigger than his own flagship, but they looked old and broken. Their surfaces were dark and no lights showed anywhere on them. "How many ships are there?" he asked. 12 large vessels, sir. Each one appears to be about 3 kilometers long. They show no power signatures, no movement, no signs of life." Dr. Iran, the chief science officer, approached the admiral. He was older than most of the crew and had studied many different alien species over the years. "Admiral, these ships are very interesting. Look at their design." The screen showed a close-up view of one of the ships. It was shaped like a long, thick arrow. Its surface was covered with strange patterns and marks. Parts of it looked like they had been damaged by meteors or space debris over many years. "They appear to be very old," Dr. Iran continued. "The metal looks primitive. I see no signs of the advanced materials we use in our ships. No energy shields, no visible weapon systems. These ships were built by a species with much less advanced technology than ours." Admiral studied the images carefully. "Could they be from one of the species we have conquered?" "I do not think so, sir. The design is completely unknown to me. I believe these ships are from a species that died out long ago. Perhaps they were trying to travel between stars, but their technology failed them." The admiral smiled. This was exactly the kind of discovery that would make the hegemony high command very happy with him. Ancient alien ships would be perfect for their war museum. Scientists could study them to learn about primitive space travel. "Send a message to High Command," he ordered. "Tell them we have discovered a fleet of ancient alien vessels. We will claim them as salvage for the hegemony." As his crew began preparing their report, the admiral continued to stare at the strange ships. There was something about them that felt different, but he could not quite understand what it was. They were so big, much bigger than they needed to be for simple space travel. And despite looking old and damaged, their basic shape seemed somehow purposeful. "Sir," called out the communications officer, "High Command is responding to our message." "Put it on the main screen." The viewing screen changed to show Grand Admiral, the leader of all hegemony forces. His massive form filled the screen, and his voice boomed across the bridge. "Admiral, this discovery pleases us greatly. Ancient ships will make excellent additions to our collection of conquered civilizations. You have our permission to claim these vessels for the hegemony." "Thank you, Grand Admiral. We will begin salvage operations immediately. Tell me, Grand Admiral continued, what species do you think built these ships? Dr. Iran stepped forward. Based on their primitive design, sir, I believe they were built by a species that tried to escape their dying home world. They probably spent generations traveling through space before their life support systems failed. It is quite common among lesser species. Grand Admiral laughed, a sound like grinding metal. Foolish creatures. They should have waited for the hegemony to find them. We would have given them a proper place in our empire as servants. Instead, they chose to die alone in the cold of space. Other officers on the bridge joined in the laughter. The idea of a species so primitive that they would try to cross space in such crude ships seemed very funny to them. Begin your salvage operations, Admiral. Document everything for our scientists. These ships will help us understand how not to build starships. The communication ended and the Admiral turned back to his crew. You heard the Grand Admiral. Prepare boarding parties. I want teams on each of those ships within the hour. As the fleet moved closer to the silent human ships, none of them noticed the very faint energy readings deep inside each vessel. Ancient systems that had been sleeping for hundreds of years were slowly beginning to wake up. Inside the largest of the ships, something that had once been called the UES Prometheus, circuits that had been cold for centuries began to warm. Deep in the ship's core, an artificial intelligence that called herself Athena 7 started her awakening sequence. The process was slow, designed to be careful and thorough. Athena 7 had been sleeping since the last time the ship had been needed. Now, as alien signals filled the space around her ship, automatic systems were telling her it was time to wake up. But she would be patient, she would observe, she would wait. After all, humanity had learned long ago that patience was often the best weapon of all. The fleet moved closer to the silent ships like hunters approaching sleeping prey. Admiral watched from his bridge as his vessels took position around the ancient fleet. Each ship was assigned to study one of the mysterious vessels. Begin detailed scans, the Admiral ordered. I want to know everything about these ships before we board them. The scanning beams hit the dark ships and bounced back with information. Dr. Iran studied the results on his screen, his face showing more confusion with each passing minute. Admiral, these readings are very strange, he said. The ships are much larger inside than they appear from the outside. The hull material is not what I expected either. What do you mean? Admiral asked. Well, sir, from the outside they look like they are made from simple metal, but our scans show the hull is actually made from something much more complex. Layers upon layers of different materials, all woven together in patterns I have never seen before. The Admiral waved his hand dismissively. Ancient species often used complex methods to make up for their lack of advanced technology. They probably needed thick hulls because they could not create proper energy shields. Dr. Iran looked uncertain, but he nodded. Yes, sir, that must be it. The communications officer spoke up. Admiral, High Command wants us to broadcast our findings to all hegemony forces. They want everyone to see these primitive ships. Excellent, open a channel to the entire fleet. Soon, Admiral's voice was being heard on every ship in the area. Behind him on the main screen, images of the human ships rotated slowly. Officers and crew of the hegemony fleet, he began. Today we have discovered the ships of a long-dead species. Look at these crude vessels and see how foolish some species can be. Laughter echoed across the communication channels as crews throughout the fleet examined the images. Look at these thick hulls, the Admiral continued, pointing at the screen. These primitive beings thought metal plates could protect them in space. They had no understanding of energy shields or defensive fields. More laughter filled the channels. A junior officer on one of the smaller ships spoke up. Admiral, I see no visible weapons on these ships at all. How did they plan to defend themselves? They probably thought running away was their best defense, Admiral replied, causing another wave of laughter. These ships were built by cowards who were too weak to fight for their territory. Dr. Iran felt uncomfortable with all the mockery, but he stayed quiet. Something about these ships bothered him, but he could not put his finger on what it was. "Sir," called the scanning officer, "I have identified what appears to be the largest ship in their formation. It is almost 4 kilometers long." The main screen switched to show the ship in question. It was massive, larger than any vessel, but it looked just as dark and dead as the others. Its surface was covered with even more strange patterns and markings. 4 kilometers of useless metal, Admiral said with amusement. Imagine how many crew members died slowly on that ship as their primitive life support failed. Grand Admiral's voice came over the communication system from the hegemony capital. "Admiral, these images are most entertaining. Our historians will enjoy studying these relics of failed evolution. How long do you think it took for the crews to die after their ship stopped working?" "Based on the primitive technology, sir, I would guess they lasted perhaps a few months before starvation or system failure killed them all." "Months of suffering in the cold darkness of space," Grand Admiral mused. "If they had waited for the hegemony to find their world, we would have given them quick deaths instead." The cruel laughter that followed this comment was heard on every ship in the fleet. They found great amusement in imagining the slow death of an entire species trapped in their failing ships. "Admiral," Dr. Iran said quietly, "I am detecting some unusual energy patterns from the largest ship." "What kind of energy patterns?" Admiral asked. "Very faint, sir, almost like something is slowly warming up inside the ship, but that is impossible, of course. These ships have been dead for centuries." The Admiral barely glanced at the readings. "Residual energy from our scanning beams. The metal is probably reflecting some of our sensor energy back at us." Dr. Iran wanted to argue, but he knew better than to question the Admiral too strongly. Still, the readings worried him. The patterns looked too organized to be random reflections. "Prepare the boarding teams," Admiral announced. "I want to see the inside of these primitive ships for myself." Within minutes, small shuttles launched from the larger ships. Each shuttle carried a team of soldiers and scientists. Their mission was to cut through the hulls of the human ships and explore whatever was inside. "I want detailed recordings of everything," the Admiral ordered. "Every corridor, every room, every piece of primitive technology. Our scientists back home will want to study how not to build starships." The first shuttle approached the largest human ship. The pilot maneuvered carefully, looking for a good place to attach their cutting equipment. The ship's hull looked smooth and featureless, with no obvious doors or landing bays. "This is ridiculous," the pilot said over the communication system. "Who builds a ship with no external docking ports?" "Primitive species," Admiral replied. "They probably never planned to leave their ships once they started their journey." The cutting beam began working on the hull of the human ship. They expected to cut through the metal quickly, but the beam seemed to have very little effect. "Sir," the pilot reported, "this hull is much tougher than it looks. Our cutting beam is barely making a mark." "Use a more powerful beam," the Admiral ordered. Ancient species sometimes made their hulls thick to compensate for poor design. Deep inside the ship they were trying to cut into, Athena 7 felt the vibrations from the cutting beam. Her awakening process was almost complete now. She had been observing the alien ships for some time, listening to their communications, learning about their technology and their intentions. The alien language was not difficult for her to understand. Her databases contained information about thousands of different species and languages. These creatures called themselves, and they belonged to something called the hegemony. More importantly, they were treating her ship and her sleeping fleet as salvage. They thought humanity was extinct. Athena 7 accessed her historical databases. The last time she had been awake was 300 years ago, when the human fleet had helped evacuate a peaceful species from their dying world. After that mission, the fleet had returned to its patrol area and gone back to sleep, waiting for the next time they would be needed. It seemed that time had arrived. Athena 7 sent quiet signals to the other 11 ships in the fleet. One by one, their artificial intelligences began to wake up. Ares 3, Hades 12, Apollo 8, and all the others started their own awakening sequences. But they would wait. They would be patient. They would let these board their ships and see what they wanted to see. After all, it was always best to fully understand an enemy before taking action. The cutting beam finally broke through the hull of the Prometheus. The boarding team prepared to enter the first human ship that anyone had set foot on in 3 centuries. They had no idea what they were about to find inside. The hole in the Prometheus's hull was just big enough for the boarding team to crawl through. Team leader went first, his energy weapon ready and his recording equipment activated. Behind him, 3 other soldiers followed, along with Dr. Eth, a specialist in ancient alien technology. The air inside is breathable, or reported as he dropped into what appeared to be a corridor, but it is very cold in here. Admiral listened to the reports from his bridge. That is expected. These ships have been dead for centuries. Continue your exploration. The team moved carefully down the corridor, their lights cutting through the darkness. The walls were covered with smooth panels and strange markings. Everything looked old but surprisingly well preserved. Admiral, Dr. Eth reported, this corridor is much larger than it should be based on our external scans. The ship appears to be bigger inside than outside. That is impossible, the Admiral replied. Check your instruments. Dr. Eth double-checked his equipment, but the readings were correct. According to his measurements, they had already walked further into the ship than the ship was long. Sir, I think these aliens had some kind of space-folding technology. The interior of the ship exists in more space than the exterior should allow. Admiral frowned. Space folding was advanced technology that even the hegemony had trouble mastering. How could a primitive species have developed it? Keep moving, he ordered. Find their control center or engine room. The boarding team continued deeper into the ship. They passed through enormous chambers that seemed designed for manufacturing. Massive machines sat silent and dark, but they looked far more advanced than anything the team had expected to find. These machines, Dr. Eth whispered into his communicator, they are not primitive at all. This looks like advanced molecular assembly equipment. You must be mistaken, Admiral said, but his voice showed less certainty than before. In another part of the ship, the team found what appeared to be crew quarters. The rooms were sized for beings roughly the same height as, but the furniture and equipment suggested these aliens had only 2 arms instead of 4. Look at this, one of the soldiers said, pointing his light at a wall panel. There are pictures here. The wall was covered with images of various scenes, cities under blue skies, oceans with islands, creatures that looked like they might be the aliens who built this ship. They walked on 2 legs and had pale skin and hair on top of their heads. They called themselves humans, Dr. Eth read from text under one of the images. Interesting. The writing is in their own language, but there are translation notes in Galactic Standard. This was puzzling. Galactic Standard had only been developed in the last 200 years. How could an ancient species have known about it? Team leader found something even more disturbing. In what appeared to be an armory, he discovered weapons unlike anything he had ever seen. They were sleek and smooth, without any visible power sources or moving parts. Admiral, you need to see this, he said, holding one of the human weapons up to his camera. Admiral studied the weapon on his screen. It looked simple, almost like a piece of art rather than a tool of war. It appears to be some kind of energy weapon, but I see no power cell or energy conduit. Dr. Iran, who had been watching the exploration from the bridge, spoke up. "Sir, I am now reading significant energy increases from all the ships in the human fleet. Something is powering up inside them." "That is impossible," Admiral said, but his confidence was starting to crack. "These ships have been dead for centuries." Deep inside the Prometheus, Athena 7 had finished her awakening sequence. She had been listening to the aliens exploring her ship, learning about their technology and their attitudes. Now she was ready to make contact. But first, she activated the ship's internal systems. Lights began to flicker on throughout the vessel. The massive manufacturing chambers hummed to life. The artificial gravity generators activated. The boarding team suddenly found themselves pulled down to what became the floor as gravity returned to the ship. "What is happening?" Or shouted into his communicator. "The ship is coming online," Dr. Eth said, his voice filled with amazement and fear. "These systems are not ancient at all. They are more advanced than anything the hegemony has built." Wall panels throughout the ship began to glow, showing displays in the human language alongside galactic standard translations. Star maps appeared, showing the positions of thousands of different star systems. Tactical displays activated, showing detailed scans of every ship in the fleet. "Admiral," Dr. Iran reported from the bridge, his voice tight with worry, "all 12 ships are now showing full power signatures. They have weapons systems activating. Many weapons systems." Admiral stared at his sensors in disbelief. The readings showed energy levels far beyond what his own ships could produce. Weapons systems that used principles his scientists did not understand. Defensive systems that seemed to bend space itself. "This is not possible," he whispered. Inside the Prometheus, a gentle voice spoke in perfect. It came from speakers throughout the ship, calm and polite but somehow terrifying. "Attention boarding parties," the voice said. "Welcome aboard the UES Prometheus. I am Athena 7, the ship's artificial intelligence. You have entered this vessel without authorization." The boarding team froze. An artificial intelligence that could speak their language perfectly. This was technology beyond what even the most advanced hegemony worlds possessed. "I have been monitoring your communications," Athena 7 continued. "Your leaders believe humanity is extinct. This is incorrect. We have been observing your species for the past 43 years. We know your technology, your military capabilities, and your expansion patterns." Admiral felt cold fear spreading through his body. If these humans had been watching them for decades, they knew everything about the hegemony. Every weakness, every secret, every plan. "How is this possible?" he demanded over the communication channel. Athena 7's response was immediate. "Admiral of the hegemony, you have made several incorrect assumptions about my people. We are not extinct, we are not primitive, and we are not defenseless." The main viewing screen on the Admiral's bridge suddenly changed without his authorization. It now showed Athena 7's holographic avatar, a tall, pale-skinned human female with calm eyes and an expression of polite interest. "Your boarding teams are safe," Athena 7 said. "They are welcome to continue exploring this ship. I believe they will find the experience educational. However, I must inform you that your presence here constitutes an act of aggression against humanity." "We thought you were dead," Admiral said weakly. "Yes, I am aware. You have spent considerable time mocking our ships and imagining our deaths. This was unwise." Around the fleet, the other human ships were also coming online. Their weapon systems were powering up, their sensors were conducting detailed scans, and their artificial intelligences were establishing communication with each other. "You have 60 seconds to withdraw your boarding parties and depart this system," Athena 7 announced. "If you do not comply, we will consider this an act of war." Admiral looked at his tactical display. His 47 ships against 12 human vessels. The numbers should have been in his favor, but the energy readings from the human ships suggested otherwise. "This is ridiculous," he said, trying to sound confident. "No matter how advanced your technology, we outnumber you 4-1. Athena 7's expression did not change. "Admiral, you continue to make incorrect assumptions. Numbers are not the deciding factor in space combat. Technology is, understanding is, preparation is." "We are the most advanced species in this galaxy," Admiral declared. "No," Athena 7 replied simply, "you are not." The countdown began. 60 seconds to decide whether to retreat or fight against an enemy he was beginning to realize he had completely misunderstood. The countdown reached 0. Admiral had made his decision. Despite his growing fear, he could not retreat. The hegemony did not run from primitive species, no matter how advanced they claimed to be. His reputation and his life depended on victory. "All ships target the alien vessels," he commanded. "Full weapons array, destroy them all." The fleet opened fire. Energy beams, plasma torpedoes, and kinetic rounds flew through space toward the human ships. 47 of the most advanced warships in the galaxy unleashed everything they had. The weapons hit their targets and simply disappeared. Admiral stared at his tactical display in confusion. What happened? Did our weapons miss? "No, sir," his weapons officer replied, his voice shaking. "Direct hits on all targets, but the weapons had no effect. It is as if they were absorbed by the enemy ships." Athena 7's voice filled the communication channels of every ship. "That was your one free attack, Admiral. You have now seen that your weapons cannot harm us. We will now demonstrate why attacking humanity is unwise." What happened next changed everything the thought they knew about space warfare. The human ships began to transform. Their dark hulls suddenly shifted and moved. Sections that had looked like old armor plating folded away to reveal gleaming weapon systems underneath. The ships grew larger as hidden parts extended outward. What had appeared to be 12 ancient relics became 12 warships that seemed to be made of light and energy. The UES Prometheus was no longer just dark metal. Its hull now glowed with soft blue light, and geometric patterns of energy ran along its surface. Weapon ports that had been completely invisible now opened along its sides, revealing technology that hurt to look at directly. "Impossible," Admiral whispered. The Prometheus fired first, but it was not energy beams or projectiles that came from its weapons. Instead, focused waves of gravity reached out and touched the nearest cruiser. The cruiser, a ship that had survived dozens of battles, simply came apart. Its molecular bonds broke under the gravitational stress. The ship turned into a cloud of individual atoms that scattered into space. "The Valor is gone," someone screamed over the communication channel. "It just dissolved." The UES Ares demonstrated a different kind of weapon. Thousands of small objects launched from its hull, moving faster than sensors could track. They looked like tiny silver insects, and they swarmed over 3 ships at once. "What are those things?" Admiral demanded. His science officer was frantically trying to scan the objects. "They appear to be some kind of self-replicating drone, sir. They are eating through our hull armor and rebuilding themselves with the materials." As they watched in horror, the 3 ships were consumed from the outside in. The silver swarm grew larger as it fed, breaking down the ships and turning them into more copies of itself. The UES Hades chose an even more terrifying approach. It opened what looked like holes in space itself. The holes appeared next to 4 ships and began pulling them in. The ships stretched and warped as they were drawn into the artificial rifts. "Space-time manipulation," Dr. Iran gasped. "They are using the fabric of reality as a weapon." One by one, the human ships demonstrated capabilities that seemed impossible. The UES Apollo created energy shields around ships and then made the shields collapse inward, crushing the vessels inside them. The UES Artemis fired beams that passed right through shields as if they were not there, turning the ship's own armor into explosive charges. Admiral watched his fleet die around him. Ships that had taken years to build were destroyed in seconds. Crews that had trained for decades were killed by weapons they could not even understand. "All ships retreat," he shouted. "Emergency jump to hyperspace." "Sir," his navigation officer reported, "hyperspace is blocked. The humans have some kind of field preventing us from jumping away." Athena 7 appeared on his main screen again. Her calm expression had not changed at all, even as she commanded weapons that destroyed entire ships. "Admiral, your fleet was designed to fight other species at your technological level," she said. "You bring energy weapons to fight opponents who can manipulate matter at the atomic level. You bring kinetic shields to fight opponents who control gravity itself. You bring numerical superiority to fight opponents who understand your technology better than you do." Around the battlefield, the human ships moved with impossible grace. They dodged weapons that moved at the speed of light. They appeared in multiple places at once. They seemed to know where every shot would be fired before it was fired. "How are you doing this?" Admiral demanded. "We have been studying your species for 43 years, Athena 7 replied. "We know the capabilities of every weapon system you have ever built. We have examined your military tactics, your strategic thinking, your psychological profiles. You are fighting an opponent who understands you completely while you understand us not at all." The truth was even worse than that. The human ships were not just more advanced than anything they had built. They were fighting with technology that seemed to come from hundreds of years in the future, weapons that used principles they had never even imagined, defensive systems that operated outside the known laws of physics. "Please," Admiral begged as his flagship shook under weapons fire that passed through his shields like they were not there. "We surrender." The attack stopped immediately. In the space where 47 warships had been, only one remained. Admiral's flagship hung in space, its weapons destroyed and its engines dead, but its crew still alive. Athena 7's voice was as calm as ever. "Admiral, you and your crew will survive this encounter. Your ship will be repaired enough to return to hegemony space. You will carry a message to your leaders." "What message?" the Admiral asked weakly. "That humanity is not extinct, that we are not primitive, and that we have been watching your expansion with great interest." Around the battlefield, the human ships began to change back to their original appearance. The glowing energy faded. The visible weapons folded back inside their hulls. Within minutes, they looked once again like old ships floating dead in space. But Admiral would never again see them as harmless relics. "Your species has a choice, Admiral," Athena 7 continued. "You can continue your pattern of conquest and expansion, in which case you will eventually encounter other human fleets, or you can reconsider your approach to galactic politics." "What do you want from us?" Admiral asked. "We want you to stop destroying peaceful species," Athena 7 replied simply. "We want you to understand that the galaxy is larger and more dangerous than you have assumed, and we want you to know that humanity is watching." The Admiral's communication system crackled to life, as his ship's damaged systems were somehow repaired by invisible human technology. "You may go now," Athena 7 said. "Tell your Grand Admiral that the humans send their regards." As his crippled ship began to move away from the human fleet, Admiral realized that everything the hegemony believed about their place in the galaxy was wrong. They were not the most advanced species. They were not the most powerful military force. And they were definitely not alone at the top of the galactic food chain. Admiral sat alone in his damaged ship as it limped through space toward hegemony territory. The journey that should have taken a few hours was now going to take several days because his engines were barely working. Every few hours, he tried to understand what had happened to his fleet. 46 ships destroyed, thousands of crew members dead, the most powerful fleet the hegemony had ever assembled, wiped out in minutes by 12 ships that had pretended to be space junk. 3 days into his journey home, Athena 7's voice came over his communication system again. "Admiral, please report to your shuttle bay." Was too tired and defeated to argue. He made his way through the damaged corridors of his ship to the shuttle bay, wondering what new horror awaited him there. What he found was not horror, but wonder. A human shuttle sat in his bay. It was beautiful in a way that ships never were. Its hull seemed to be made of liquid light, and it hummed with power that his sensors could not measure. "Please enter the shuttle, Admiral. There are things you need to understand before you return to your people." Against his better judgment, Admiral entered the human shuttle. The inside was larger than the outside, just like the human warships. The walls showed images of stars and planets he had never seen before. The air smelled like growing plants and clean water. The shuttle moved without him feeling any acceleration. Within minutes, he was back inside the Prometheus, standing in a vast chamber that definitely had not existed when his boarding teams explored the ship. Athena 7 was waiting for him, not as a hologram this time, but as a physical projection that looked completely real. She stood in the center of a room that showed the history of human civilization on its walls. "Welcome aboard the Prometheus, Admiral. I apologize for the dramatic nature of our first meeting, but you and your people left us few options." Admiral looked around the chamber in amazement. The walls showed images of humans building cities, exploring their own planet, and eventually reaching into space. But these were not the primitive scenes he had expected. "Your people," he said slowly, "they are not extinct." "No, Admiral, we are not extinct. We evolved beyond the need for permanent worlds many centuries ago. We became a spacefaring civilization that values exploration and knowledge above conquest." The images on the walls changed to show human ships traveling between stars, making contact with various alien species, and helping them solve problems. Some of the species in the images were ones the hegemony had conquered years ago. "You have been watching us," Admiral said. "Yes, we have been observing the hegemony for 43 years. We watched you destroy the Oran civilization. We watched you enslave the Ani people. We watched you turn them into a mining colony after killing half their population." Each name hit Admiral like a physical blow. These were hegemony victories, conquered species that had been completely defeated. How could the humans know about them? "We also watched you prepare to do the same thing to 17 other species," Athena 7 continued. "Species that have done nothing to harm you. Species whose only crime is existing in territory you want to claim." "That is the natural order," Admiral said weakly. "The strong rule the weak." Athena 7's expression became sad. "Admiral, that is not natural order. That is the choice of a species that has confused power with purpose." The walls showed new images. Human ships arriving at worlds just before hegemony fleets attacked. Civilian populations being evacuated to safety. Entire species being relocated to hidden colonies where they could rebuild their civilizations in peace. "Impossible," Admiral whispered. "We have detailed records. Those species were all destroyed." "No, Admiral. They were rescued. We allowed you to believe you had destroyed them because it was easier than revealing our existence too early. Some of them are now thriving on worlds you will never find." Admiral sank into a chair that appeared behind him, as if the ship itself was taking care of him. Everything he thought he knew about the hegemony's great victories was wrong. "Why are you telling me this?" he asked. "Because your species stands at a crossroads, Admiral. You can continue on your current path, in which case you will eventually force us to take more direct action, or you can choose to change." "Change how?" Athena 7 gestured, and the walls showed images of a different future. Ships working together with other species. Trade routes instead of conquest fleets. Cities built together by multiple alien races. Your people are not evil, Admiral. You are simply young and afraid. Most species go through a phase where they believe conquest is the only way to ensure survival, but it is not. Cooperation is stronger than conquest. Knowledge is more valuable than territory. The Grand Admiral will never believe this, Admiral said. He will think you are trying to trick us into weakness. Perhaps, but you have seen our ships in action. You know we could have destroyed your entire civilization if we wished. Instead, we chose to save your life and send you home with a message. Athena 7 walked to a wall that showed a map of the galaxy. Thousands of star systems glowed with different colors. The green systems are under human protection, Admiral. Any hegemony fleet that enters them will be turned away. The blue systems are inhabited by species that have chosen to work together instead of fighting. The red systems are places where we are currently evacuating populations threatened by aggressive species like yours. Admiral stared at the map. There were hundreds of protected systems, far more than the hegemony had ever suspected existed. How many ships do you have? He asked. Enough, Admiral. That is all you need to know. The human AI turned back to him with an expression that was both kind and terrifying. Your species has great potential. Your technology is impressive, even if it cannot match ours. Your people are capable of art, music, literature, and science. You could become a valuable part of the galactic community. And if we refuse, then you will discover that humanity is far more patient than you can imagine. We have waited centuries for species to evolve beyond their aggressive phases. We can wait centuries more, but we will not allow you to destroy others while you decide what kind of species you want to be. Admiral was transported back to his shuttle and then to his own ship without remembering the journey. As his damaged vessel continued its slow trip home, he tried to prepare a report that would convince the Grand Admiral to listen. But he knew it would not be enough. The hegemony would see this as a challenge to be overcome, not a warning to be heeded. They would build bigger fleets and more powerful weapons. They would search for the human and plot their revenge. And when they did, Admiral realized, they would discover just how much they had underestimated their opponents. 2 weeks later, his ship reached hegemony space. Admiral delivered his report to Grand Admiral, who listened with growing anger and disbelief. You expect me to believe that a species of primitives destroyed our most powerful fleet? The Grand Admiral roared. Sir, I saw it myself. Their technology is beyond anything we have ever encountered. Then we will build better technology. We will create weapons specifically designed to fight these humans, and we will teach them the price of interfering with the hegemony. Admiral said nothing more. He had delivered his message and his warning. If the hegemony chose to ignore it, that was no longer his responsibility. Far away in the dead star system, the human ships had returned to their dormant state. They floated silently in space, looking once again like ancient derelicts. But deep within each ship, artificial intelligences maintained their watch over the galaxy. Athena 7 recorded her final log entry of the encounter. Contact with hegemony completed. Warning delivered. Species assessment. Aggressive but educable. Recommendation. Continued observation with intervention protocols on standby. Additional fleets have been dispatched to protect species on projected hegemony expansion routes. She paused in her recording and added, Personal note. The show promised despite their current behavior. Perhaps in another century or two, they will be ready to join the greater galactic community. Until then, humanity will continue to watch and protect those who cannot protect themselves. In the vast darkness of space, the human fleet returned to sleep, waiting for the next time they would be needed. But they would not wait long. The galaxy was a large and dangerous place, filled with young species that thought strength meant destruction and power meant conquest. Fortunately for the peaceful civilization scattered among the stars, humanity had learned long ago that true strength lay in protection, and real power came from the wisdom to use it responsibly. The watch would continue,